You're watching the Battered Fans Network.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 3 of the Battered MLS Fans Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Granada, and as always, I will be accompanied by 4 other MLS content creators from across the country. We're a little West Coast heavy today, so I brought in one East Coast buddy, first 2-time guest, and I want to say a crowd favorite here on the Battered Fans Network. Let's go start off with Mr. Tommy One Time from Scarves and Spikes. How are you doing, sir? Oh, and you are on mute. Good start.
I unmuted when you were unmuting me. I said, all right, I hate Leagues Cup. I'm already done with it. So is Atlanta. So,
all right. Well, you know what? I'm glad because we have, and I'll bring him on now. He is not also been on the Battered Network before, Mr. Favian Rankel, and he is going to defend the Leagues Cup with me because I love following his Leagues Cup tweets. What's going on, Favian?
I love how I'm like the Leagues Cup guy. Like, okay, yes, I like Leagues Cup, and I like soccer games. All right, so no,
I love Leagues Cup also.
It's a pleasure to be on. I just want competitive soccer between Mexico and U.S. That's all I want.
Me too. What's wrong with that? And with that, I'll bring on my next guest because this is a special guest. We usually have 5 teams represented, but we went a little different this time because I have Mr. Lewis from the Lions Den, which represents both Portland and Leon. So we got a double hitter here. What's going on, Mr. Lewis?
Just to be clear, I represent both Leon and Portland. My podcast is Leon only. I think my
I apologize. Yes, I didn't specify.
My podcast mates would get a little annoyed if they thought they were supporting Portland. I'm the only one from Portland because I'm from Portland originally, living in close to Leon now. So yeah, that's how that happened. But I'm great. Thanks for having me on here, and I'm looking forward to talking about some pretty cool stuff coming up here.
Yeah, man. I really want to pick your brain about the whole Liga MX and MLS thing. But before we do, last but not least, Erik from Voice of Black and Gold. What's going on, Erik? West Coast, LAFC?
What's up, guys? Just living that charmed LAFC fan life, and that that expansion team lag just never really happened. So hey,
must be nice.
Yeah, there's for me, there's nothing to dislike with Leagues Cup or anything else. So I love to watch some soccer. Let's do it.
And we're gonna get into a couple rumored names that are coming over to LA. But before we do, I did want to talk about an old LA star that played for a team that you called the Carson Galaxy. My understanding is that they actually called the LA Galaxy, and it was Mr. Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So before we get into Leagues Cup, I wanted to get into his comments. He was basically said, right, and I'm going to just kind of summarize what he said, was basically MLS is growing. It's not growing fast enough. Too many rules. Do you guys think that the MLS isn't growing fast enough, despite the fact that it's had a boom with the whole Apple deal? And I mean, I think it's growing exponentially, but he says that it could grow even faster. And I'll start from left to right. Mr. Tommy One Time, what do you think about the growth? Is Zlatan right? We should be growing even faster as a league.
I think when you talk about growth, I went back and I did my homework and listened to him for a little bit. And I think it's a combination of a lot of things, right? Like, people don't understand the league, the rules. Like, if I try to get my friends into MLS and then they start talking to me about like how the rules are and like what they are, they stop me after about 45 seconds. Once I get into GAM, DPs, all of this, they don't want to hear it anymore. And like, granted, like you look at other salary caps, like in around the league, the NFL, the NBA, they're crazy to understand as well. But MLS is just weird. So as far as like trying to get people to grow and understand the league and get into it, it's hard for people to be able to do that. People like to be able to figure out, hey, it's the end of the trade deadline. What can my team do here? They don't know that because they don't know all of the rules. They don't even publicize what the rules are or like what your cap space is, right? You have to figure that on your own on spreadsheets. There's sickos with spreadsheets out there that are trying to figure this out. So as far as I want to at least look at it as from the fan base, like, it's hard to grow the league if you don't really understand how the league runs. And you talk about the Apple thing as far as growing the league. I think internationally, you are correct. Someone said to me a couple days ago, whatever happened to MLS? Like, I remember used to seeing on at bars all the time, like being able to watch these games. You don't have that as much. So I like the Apple deal, but as far as growing the league, If you're out there like at a bar on a Saturday night, guarantee you that there's no MLS on. And in the summer, before the Apple deal, you would have MLS on TVs all the time, just because it was on ESPN or Fox every single week.
So you think the Apple deal's kind of stunted its growth?
I think there's pluses and minuses of it. Internationally,
Okay.
it's great. I mean, you see
Yeah.
people that are able to follow their favorite players easily by just buying the app. But as far as the US and getting casual people into it, I mean, that comment saying, did MLS disappear? I haven't seen MLS on TV in a long time anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to want to watch it.
Right.
That
You don't
makes
get
sense.
casuals as much anymore.
Right. Favian, I could see you being a spreadsheets guy. How you feeling about the growth of the MLS?
To be honest, I think I agree with him in a bit. I think the league could be growing a bit more, but I think we're also way too divided as a fan base. I feel like there's a lot of fans that don't want to be a casual, that don't want to just follow one or more teams. They just want to follow one team. So you don't get the people that want to watch Seattle, Portland on the East Coast when it's at 10 at night, right? You don't get those people. So this is something that the NBA has done very well with primetime games, where you get these primetime teams, and then you get, let's say, an Atlanta fan to like the Lakers playing the Warriors, right? Because it's a primetime game. I think Apple TV can be a little bit better on scheduling those primetime games personally. They did a bit of it with Messi when he first came and with Leagues Cup, and everybody was watching Leagues Cup last year with Messi in those games. And those felt like primetime games. They felt like little Super Bowls. I mean, everybody on Twitter was talking about them. So it was something that I think was lost in this kind of season of MLS. I think we don't have enough primetime games. Personally, there should be a Friday night game every single week. You don't compete with anything on Friday night. A lot of us are in the demographic where we either have kids or we don't go out Friday nights. So having a Friday night game is not a bad idea, just because MLS is known for being a friendly family league, right? So have those Friday night games, watch them at home with your family, or who knows, maybe have a watch party, and that's a way to get around the bar thing, right? I think a lot of us MLS fans maybe have to do a little bit of bar part too. If they're not playing MLS, and be like, bro, you don't have Apple TV, like, roast the bar owner, because you can get it on DirecTV too, right? So it's something where you can get the MLS season pass on DirecTV if you're a bar owner, and that's something that maybe not enough people know, right? So it's something where I think the foundation is in place, but I also think that MLS fans aren't really watching other games, and maybe that's because of the scheduling. Maybe that's because all the games are at the same time, or maybe that's because there's not enough primetime games. So my opinion, I think MLS is growing, but I think it could be growing faster, like Zlatan was saying, for sure.
Well, and to that point, I had never considered Friday nights, because, I mean, every night is pretty dedicated to a sport, right?
Right.
The NFL has Sunday and Monday.
Thursday.
The NBA has Tuesday, and now the NFL has Thursday now. NBA is basically Tuesday. The only one that really isn't touched, college football, is Saturday, even if MLS plays there. College football on Saturday. Friday, nobody really touches. That's interesting.
Right. I mean, if you have a Portland-Seattle game on Friday night, I bet you people are going to watch.
Yeah. Portland-Seattle game, that would be an awesome game to watch. And then one quick thing before I move on to Lewis. What do you think about the actual rules? What do you think about the whole DP rule? Because Satan thought that it's kind of silly that we have the 3 DP rule.
Yeah, look, to be honest with you, a lot of MLS owners have their hands in other teams. And that's the honest truth. We're talking about the New England Revolution. We're talking about the Quakes. We're talking about the Rapids. We're talking about a lot of these teams have other entities that they pay more attention to, okay? So my whole thing is, how do you get these owners to really believe that MLS is going to surpass maybe the NFL, surpass something that they have another kind of, let's say they have another kind of entity where they're trying to make the most money on. So, for example, Atlanta's a weird one, right? Because Atlanta can do both. But let's say you're the New England Revolution. Does Kraft really believe that the MLS team could actually overtake or be the same as the NFL team, which is something that those owners are always kind of talking about? And that's something that the owners like the LAFCs or the Columbuses are always pretty frustrated at, because those are the owners that want to maybe hold the growth a little bit, right? So it just begs to differ. Is it time to kind of get some new ownerships, or is it time to kind of get some forward thinking in that sense? Because we can all talk about getting rid of the DPs, but if these owners don't want to change the rules and they're making enough money, I think it just doesn't matter. The conversation doesn't even matter, to be honest.
Yeah, I can see that. Lewis, I'm going to ask you about the MLS, but before I do, we do have some Inter Miami fans in here, and they keep bringing up, and I guess they wanted to ask, Phil Neville, your thoughts on Phil Neville, because he had not the best of exits here in Inter Miami.
Well, he didn't have the best of entrances into Portland either, but most of that was having very little to do with any of his previous coaching tenures. It had to do with some old tweets that he put out when he was a member of Manchester United that were perceived as misogynistic. And in a market like Portland, especially everything we've gone through, I don't know how aware any of you are with all the controversies both within the Timbers and Portland Thorns of the NWSL organization about gender-related abuse of players and keeping administration and, more than anything, the owner, Merritt Paulson, who still owns the Timbers. He sold the Thorns, which was seen by people as a move, but not enough of a move. And so, given all of that controversy surrounding the Timbers franchise, Timbers and Thorns franchises, which used to be one entity, they used to be owned by the same people. Speaking of owners with multiple assets, most people were in a market like Portland, which is very, I don't want to say the word woke as though it were a bad thing, but it has that kind of reputation. We have that kind of reputation as a fan base, being very, very sensitive to any sort of social justice and human rights issues when it comes to hiring someone, bringing someone into an organization. That was all the chatter surrounding Phil Neville. That dust has all pretty much settled.
And what about on the pitch?
Because he's got the team playing well. I don't know how great of a tactician he is, but he's gotten the most out of the roster that he has, which is still flawed, but has done well. I mean, we are in playoff position before August or September for the first time in probably since we made MLS Cup back in 2021. And so I feel like on the pitch, or at least, I mean, I feel like the fans trust him to galvanize a locker room, and they trust him to get the most out of the players that he's given. I still have my doubts about him as a tactician. But
so do we down here.
But we, referring to the Portland Timbers, the Timbers have been winning. The Timbers have been winning, and they say winning solves everything. I mean, I'm sure there are people within the fan base who haven't forgotten about Phil's checkered past, at least in terms of his old tweets. I mean, he has gone out of his way to try to make nice with our ultras, with the Timbers Army, and I know made himself available for any sort of discourse and dialogue. I think that has helped too. But more than that, it's just been the winning. We have a winning team this year. I don't know how far they'll go, but we have a winning team this year, and it's been the first time we really have had a winning team. We can say that in quite some time, and that came with the coaching change. So
that's
for
good.
now, Phil Neville is in our good graces.
There's some people that still want him back here. Not a lot, not me, but there are some people that want him back. But in general, MLS-wise, going back to Zaltan's comments, what do you think about the MLS's growth? Do you think it is slow and it should have been faster because of the rules? And then I'm curious your take on Liga MX, because I feel like Liga MX is taking a little bit of a hit. They got rid of ProRel. They're assimilating kind of to the MLS way of doing things.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the growth of MLS, just from when I started watching shortly after the Timbers became an MLS franchise back in 2011, I mean, the league looks nothing like it did back then. You can argue about whether it should be farther along in its development. I mean, this is still a very, very, very young league. It has not even 30, it's about 30 years of existence, not even 30 years of existence. That's infancy still you can't, what are they comparing it to? What were the European leagues everybody loves to watch now? What were they 30 years into their existence? Obviously, we live in different times, and the incremental development doesn't have to be the same rate, but I don't know. I feel like it's grown significantly. I'm not one to say that it's not growing fast enough, considering even in the last 5 to 10 years, it is nothing, to me, resembles nothing like it did, for example, back in 2015 when the Timbers won their one and only MLS Cup. The league back then, to me, looked nothing like it does now. I see a ton of change. I see a ton of improvement. The profile of player that is coming into the league is different. Used to be you only got superstars when they were washed up. Now you're getting them, at least in some cases, while they're still maybe the tail end, but still in their prime.
Well, people still want them, kind of like Antoine Griezmann. People still want him, and he might be coming over.
Yeah. So also, to go to the rules thing, I'll level with you guys. I don't particularly care for European football because I cannot stand the lack of parity. I can't stand how lopsided it is, where only 3 or 4 teams have any chance to win anything in a given season. I want to watch a league where theoretically every single team in the league has a shot going in. I don't think I would have fallen in love with the game of soccer were it not for Liga MX and MLS, which have their playoff system, and also, if not rules in the Liga MX's case, but this a context in place where there's parity within the league. Seeing the same champion 2 years in a row is very uncommon. I love that about both of these leagues. So I feel like the rules that are in place in MLS keep the parity within the league. Imagine if they got rid of the salary cap. Imagine if you could just sign anybody you wanted, like it is in Europe. I mean, LAFC and Miami, I'm sure 2 of the guys in this podcast would love that, but they would win every year. I'm sorry, they just would. And I have no interest in watching a league where that is the case. To be honest with you.
To be fair, I also believe that if they got rid of the salary cap, that Miami would take advantage of that. But I want no part of that. I know we would benefit, but I like that fact that we have parity. I think it's kind of what makes the NFL so popular. And let me go over now to Erik. Erik, Griezmann possibly coming through. The MLS is growing. Is it growing fast enough? LAFC sure took a skyrocket from the very first day that they stepped foot in the MLS. How are you feeling about Zlata's comments? Zlatan, the one from Carson.
I'm gonna try to put my homerism down here and not say what I really think about Zlatan and getting owned by Carlos Vela in particular. But anyway, Did he? Yeah. One of them knocked the other one out of the playoffs pretty well and sent them packing. But that's not really the point. I think with Zlatan and the growth of the league, and this is something there was a lot of things that have been gone over. One is the salary cap and the rules. And for myself, I'm a big NFL fan and I love nerding out on salary cap rules. And I love nerding out on MLS salary cap rules. I find it endlessly fascinating. I wish it was a little more transparent. I think there's a whole kind of pundit and media ecosystem that's ready to go and start really speculating on cap hits, who's got how much room, what can they really do with that? And that's that. I think if you look at the business model of MLS, or even take a step back to the talent, if you look at the talent 10 to 15 years ago, nowhere near what it is now. We would get some guys who were washed at a level far beyond that. Of course, David Beckham was the one that broke the mold and came here before he was just completely shot. But a lot of guys, you look at Ashley Cole came here, Steven Gerrard, these guys did absolutely nothing over Gonzalo Higuain, his quote, "Oh, I thought I could play with a cigarette hanging in my mouth here." That, and this kind of that's the kind of guys we used to get in this league 10, 15 years ago. Now we're getting guys who are on the back end of their prime, but they're still in their prime and they're ready to do some things. And I think part of what that's doing, aside from the Messi effect, is bringing some of the younger guys choosing MLS for more exposure that wouldn't. Now, as far as growth, we got to look at what's the business model of MLS. And the financial model pre-Apple deal and post-Apple deal is game day. MLS teams' bread and butter is made on game day. It's fans with their butts in the seats paying for tickets. Before the Apple deal, I remember reading in MLS, the revenue was 80% game day. Only 20% of MLS revenue is outside. That's like minor league baseball. How do minor league baseball teams survive? And you start thinking about them, and they start having crazy antics. They have crazy 7th inning stretch races. They almost get a vaudeville spectacle to it. And I think with LAFC, it's a bit of that, and MLS is a bit of that as well. When we came in, they pushed so hard on the atmosphere and the experience. And, there's no coincidence, I think, either that Larry Friedman, the president of our club, came from minor league baseball. where, there is no TV money. Like, they're paying their players unless they're a farm system getting paid by a big team. But aside from that, and some of the teams he run didn't, they're getting people to come in and spend their money at the gate, and that's how they make their bills. And MLS is still in that position. And that's why I think really the attendance numbers is the true growth method that we're going to use. Of course, some of the owners are super rich. They have tons of money, but this isn't Saudi Arabia. MLS isn't on a PR mission that Saudi is. And I think we're already seeing like players start to cool on that whole scene as some guys have came there and realized like the life
it wasn't with the money.
The game, it isn't that great. So I think as far as this thing just takes time, I think there's no rushing it. The growth has been pretty organic as it goes, even with Messi in. I think it wasn't like the NASL when Pele came through, that all of a sudden there was a boost. Like when Pele came in like 76, I think it was, there was 200,000 kids registered in AYSO soccer. And 3 years later, that number had jumped to like 5 million kids, like this massive growth, massive effect. But I think we're kind of past that. And the growth we have now is going to be slower and more sustained. And I think if we grow too fast, there's always the risk of collapsing the system, which has happened to multiple leagues before this. So kind of just to summarize, put the cherry on the top. We're growing how we grow. If we're going to grow more, it involves more people getting into games. We were talking earlier about like the Miami stadiums looking to be like 28,000. And it's going to start getting into filling up stadiums that get closer to the 30,000 mark. And from there, the new stadiums will go up to the 35. When we start getting 40, 50,000 butts in the seats in the games, our league is going to start rivaling the big ones. But we got to get people to the games first, and that's how it's going to grow, in my opinion.
I agree. And just real quick, how do you feel about the whole DP rule?
I think the DP rule is a really good compromise between owners that are ambitious and owners that aren't. I think I actually find it better than like the NBA luxury tax. And, it's probably a more sustainable model as well as the NFL hard salary cap, which is like 230 million this year. Is that, it gives teams flexibility to be more of a money ball team, which we've seen in some teams. And I will point out with LAFC this year, currently pre-Olivier Giroud, we're 23 out of 29 in spending, and famously go back to the 2022 Philadelphia Union, who was dead last in spending, was a tiebreaker away from winning the Supporter Shield and lost the cup in shootouts, So having a team at that end of the salary scale be able to do this against anybody else, I think is really one of the most charming things about our league. So I love the designated player rule. I like the U22 kind of toggle that they're doing where you can go 3 or 4 and then your DP 3 or 2, depending. I think this is also going to allow teams who want to play more of a money ball, they're going to be able to play more of a money ball. And, it's really all about a savvy GM at this point.
I'd like the salary cap to go up a little bit more, but I agree. I like the DP rules. I like the parity, and I kind of hope it stays. I know some people want it to go away, but I want the parity. I was going to switch over to Leagues Cup, but instead of going to Tommy, since your team sucks and it's already eliminated, I'm going to go to Favian. Favian, Leagues Cup group stage. What did you What did you think of the Leagues Cup group stage? Because I know you were putting out the numbers because everybody was saying attendance is horrible. Nobody's going to the games. Oh, the boycott is working. I don't think the boycott worked very well, unless you looked at Atlanta Stadium. And I think that the games have been pretty compelling. So what do you think about the group stage?
Yeah, I want to say this about everything. I think a lot of people don't realize that the American soccer fan is a lot different on the West Coast than the American soccer fan on the East Coast.
Oh, 100%.
A lot of people don't recognize that the West Coast fan is not waking up at 3 a.m. to watch Harry Kane. That's the honest truth, right? They are going to a carne asada to watch Cruz Azul play against America at 5 p.m. with all their friends. That's 100% what they're doing. So I think a lot of people that didn't realize that this Leagues Cup has a lot of potential doesn't realize how big Liga MX is. I walk outside in San Jose and I see maybe 2 San Jose Earthquakes jerseys, but I see 4 Chivas, I see 5 America, I even see Cruz Azul and Toluca, right? So it's something where I think a lot of the East Coast people don't realize how big Liga MX is on the West Coast. And if you take a look at the attendance numbers, the West Coast was definitely heavy with those kind of attendance numbers, right? If you look at the East Coast, you saw games that, barely filled up any stadiums. So it's something where I think the American soccer fan really needs to understand, that there's just two different groups. A lot of people on the East Coast love US Open Cup because that resembles something from England. It resembles something from Europe, right? Where anybody could, essentially play the team from the first division and then win, and it's a Cinderella story and it's a romanticized kind of thing. But to be honest, the casual is not the biggest fan of that because they don't know, the Birmingham Legion, they don't know those teams. So my whole thing was, why not both? I'm on this with you, Daniel. If you want to have US Open Cup and you want to have Leagues Cup, sure, just raise the salary cap and have both, So it's just something, in my opinion, where I felt like shouldn't be Leagues Cup versus US Open Cup. This should be something where, okay, well, look at Chivas Quakes right now. Quakes have had like 14K all season at their stadium, but now they're all of a sudden have like close to 50,000 at Levi's, right? Like this is something where maybe some of those Chivas fans say, shoot, we just lost to the Quakes and we have their best player from last year. Maybe I should follow the Quakes a little bit, So it's something where there's just so much potential growth, where I felt like Leagues Cup could be something. It sucks that it kind of was you versus me instead of let's all kind of get together and beat Liga MX teams, right? But yeah, in my opinion, I did like Leagues Cup. I thought the group stages went well. It would have been a different story if Messi was playing. Of course, Tigres still had 45,000 versus Inter Miami, which is something that is very, very good. 45,000 for any type of soccer game in the U.S. should be applauded, even if it's Inter Miami. But yeah, again, it was a great atmosphere. Teams were cheering like it was a Mexican soccer game. They were doing the same chants that they do in Mexico. That's some of the feedback I was getting. And it felt like a true atmosphere from all these Liga MX teams. So I think they did take it seriously. Teams like Tigres, teams like Monterrey. Shoot, Monterrey just fired Tano Ortiz, right? I mean, the guy who was talking smack to Messi in CONCACAF Champions League, right? So this is a tournament that, in my opinion, I thought they were taking seriously. But I just think I think a whole bunch of kind of narratives were swayed out there, and maybe people didn't enjoy it as much as they should have.
That's interesting because I never considered that take. And even though I wanted to skip over Tommy, I'll bring Tommy in here as my only other East Coast brother in here. Did you ever consider the fact that us over here on the East Coast, we don't care about Leagues Cup as much because we don't really care about Liga MX much over here? Because the Mexican, I'm assuming in the West Coast, and I'll go to Eric and Lewis in a second. I'm assuming because the Mexican population over there is so much higher, do you think that that's why we don't care that much over here?
Well, Atlanta, it has a very interesting area, right? Because it's transplants. But you have to get the right teams there. Santos Laguna, they had a very, very small group that came in to see them. I was actually shocked there were so many, but they had like a few rows there that were excited about it. But then also you get Atlanta, DC for the third time this year. No one here wants to watch Atlanta, DC 3 times in a row. I didn't want to watch that. And, they were forced to go to that game, and I think they had 36,000 fans there because it was part of the ticket package. But then the second game was not, and they got, I think, just over 29,000 for that game, and it didn't look like, and that's gate, right? So how many people actually showed up? It was much less than that.
And the stadium's huge, so even if you get a solid 18,000, it still looks empty.
Right, and it's not like wrestling where they like try to move all the fans to the TV side to make it look filled. You can't do that. You can be like, can everybody go to the camera side to make this look better? If they did, it would be genius, but they're not going to do that.
Lewis, let me go to you real quick. You live in Mexico. You cover León. You're a Portland fan. Before I ask you about Portland, Liga MX fans in general, you do a podcast, so I'm assuming you have your ears to the ground.
Yeah.
Do they care about Leagues Cup? And if they do you think they care as much, less, or more than MLS fans?
I think they do care in the sense that whenever your team is playing in Liga MX, it's an event. No matter what cup it is, it could be Conca Champions, it could be Liga MX, it could be a meaningless money grab friendly. When your team is playing, it's an event. You want to see it, and It's been an issue, but the issues that the Mexican fans have with the Cup is different than the ones in the U.S. The biggest issue you mentioned it, that it takes away importance from the U.S. Open Cup, makes the U.S. Open Cup practically not a thing. Obviously, in Mexico, they don't care about that. But we have our own grievances with it. First of all, the Apple TV thing. Almost nobody in Mexico has Apple TV that I know of.
Really?
Very, 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 very few people. I saw some people in Leon who managed to find a bar that had Apple TV and they streamed it. But it's not a common thing. And like you were, I forget who it was that was saying that. I think it was you, Fabian, that was saying that in terms of international viewership, it does increase. In Mexico, I don't know how much that is the case. I know very few people in my community who have Apple TV. I have it so that I can get all my MLS games. But yeah, I think that is an issue. Also, the format. I had the good fortune of being in Portland for Leon's entire stay there. They were there for almost a week. They played their match there, but then they stayed. Rather than go back to Mexico or move on to Denver, they stayed in Portland for an entire week. I went to 3 trainings. And, meanwhile, the Timbers are sleeping in their own beds that entire time, whereas Leon is basically, they're on a road trip this entire time. That's how it is for all these Mexican clubs. None of this is played in Mexico. So I feel like, the fans in Mexico, first of all, many of them can't travel to the United States to see the games, even those who want to, just because they don't have permission to enter the country. And 2, it's hard for them to watch the games on TV. And 3, they consider it a distinct advantage for the MLS clubs that they all get to play at home. And the Liga MX clubs have to be traveling this entire time. Even well-stacked squads like Tigres and Monterrey, you saw in last year's edition how that started to weigh on them as the tournament went on. And that's not going to change. I don't expect at any point, however long the Leagues Cup goes, that any of it will ever be played in Mexico, because it's just not as profitable for the people who are organizing this.
Right.
But a lot of people in Mexico take issue with that. So the season started, we played 4 matches. Now you're taking my team away for an entire month to do what exactly? And we can't even really watch it that easily unless a friend of ours has Apple TV. Maybe 1 in 10 people has Apple TV. I don't know. 1 in 10 people who watches the Liga MX, I should say, in Mexico has Apple TV. I think it's hard for them. It's hard for them to be captivated by it. But they do make an effort to try to watch it as best they can, because, like I say, it's an event when your team plays in Mexico. And when Leon plays, Leon is all about the match that day. That's just the way it is. And so even if it's in a new tournament, they feel like somebody invented this just to make money, and it's not designed for any of our teams to have any sort of success. But our team is playing its competitive match, and we want to watch it. They do have issues with it. Not the same issues as the majority of MLS fans, I would say, but yeah, they're not convinced by it. Let me put it that way.
I get you. All right. Yeah. And Erik, how do you feel about Leagues Cup? Because I had never taken into consideration what Favian said. What Lewis said, I kind of figured Mexican fans don't like that it's all played here in the United States. And I didn't know about the Apple TV access, but that all makes sense to me.
Let me actually add something real quick. Sorry, guys.
Go for it. Go, yeah.
Sorry, Erik, my bad. Real quick with this. So when I was checking out the Google Trends, I know a lot of people were getting mad about me about the Google Trends, right? So my whole thing is, if you're on Apple TV, you just go to Apple TV and you just click the game, right? But if you don't have Apple TV, how does someone watch a game? You're telling me no one in Mexico has ever pirated a game? You're telling me no one games? Of course, you're going to have to Google it, right? You're going to have to Google Chivas versus San Jose, or however way you pirate this game, right? So I think a lot of people did watch this game, and I think a lot of people understand that pirating is a real thing, and they can still watch the games. And I know we shouldn't say that, and I know it's kind of the unheard, but I think a lot of streaming numbers are maybe a little swayed, because if you can find something on Apple TV on your computer, you could probably pirate it too. So that's
I think that contributes to your Google Trends, though. People looking for ways to pirate it, they put into Google Leagues Cup, and that probably, because I know you were putting a lot of those stats up.
And my whole thing is, how does Leagues Cup in Mexico get 10 times the amount of view or searches than the Olympics, right? I get it. The Olympics is a big thing for the U.S. and maybe not for Mexico, but 10 times? We're talking 10 times? That's kind of wild.
Probably, as Lewis said, they're probably trying to find the game.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it too. So kind of one of the things that I think about it, and this comes last summer, my wife and I, we went to Las Vegas to go see the U.S. team take on El Tri. And we talked, it was about 80% El Tri fans at that game. It was, I forget one of the cups, but anyways, a lot of the people I talked to, they're first and second generation and they've been here. And I think this is really what the great thing about Leagues Cup is, and before I get into that, starting out, I didn't know what to think of the tournament. And what I really thought last year was a fantastic tournament. And what I do love is seeing my team play against teams we don't play. We played Tijuana. Great seeing us play the Cholos for a game, I can't wait to see us play more Liga MX teams because, we played Vancouver 6 times last year. Yeah, almost 7 if we went 3+. We played them 6 times last year. And we played them 3 this year. Within one calendar year, we played 9 games against Vancouver. I'm so sick of seeing Vancouver. Nothing against them. I'm just like, dude, I've seen enough Vancouver for a long time.
Well, and you might see them again in the Leagues Cup.
I know. We already saw them once in Leagues Cup. So, but anyway, so when we were in Vegas, a lot of the El Tri fans were like, they were first generation or second generation, and they're like, we really can't travel back to Mexico. So the only time we're going to see El Tri is when they come play here. And I think this phenomenon is very similar with a lot of the teams. Now, in Los Angeles, if I had a nickel for every Club America bumper sticker or sticker I see on the back of a van, I'd have a ton of money. Same with Chivas, same with a lot of the teams. They have huge fan bases up here. And a lot of them just have trouble getting down there to go see a game. So when they come up here and they play up here, this is the best opportunity for the massive Liga MX fan base living in the U.S. that by some accounts outnumbers MLS fan bases here. This is their chance to come see their team. So I know the Liga MX teams they're traveling, but as we saw with Chivas playing down at Dignity in Carson, the Chivas was 80% of the stands. They came and took over. When they were up at Levi's, they took it over. For the Liga MX team, this is a chance for them to come see their fans that move north and are not able to see them down south anymore. So I think this is an underrated thing as we look at what's the point of this tournament? That's a big point of it, is they're getting people to come to their games that just can't get down there. So that said, I think it's a hugely entertaining tournament. It is definitely a massive competitive disadvantage for the Liga MX teams. I would love to see us go play games down there, but I think for the reason, as I just mentioned earlier, that moving it financially is probably a wash. And if they move the games down there, they're going to get almost no very small MLS fans traveling down there for these games. And, and the Liga MX fans that are already here are coming to the game. So
yeah, for sure.
I think the finances, that's it. Now, as far as the whole Open Cup, I love the Open Cup as well. And to me, a lot of this falls on U.S. Soccer. I've looked at their financial statements that they put out yearly, and U.S. Soccer spends almost nothing on Open Cup. They don't make very much off of it either, which means that somebody's eating the cost. Our games are fairly well attended, but even in our case, at our stadium, maybe 12,000 seats were open, and the other 10,000 seats, the sections were just completely closed off, which means these venues, when they have to operate at such small capacity, it doesn't make sense. As economies of scale, you have to pack that stadium for the financials to make sense. Atlanta was the most memeable of it. They played up in Kennesaw County, and they had 1,400 people showing up or something like that. And, that's a tough situation as well. And imagine that at their stadium. If you have 5,000 people showing up at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it's like people are taking a big bath, Yeah. And so I think all in all, like I said in the first section, it just comes down to butts and seats. And the Open Cup, it needs more people in these seats. I don't understand why we can't have a packed stadium to play these teams. I go to every game. I traveled last year. I took a 6-hour drive up to Monterey, California to watch us play up there, Maybe with these, it just makes more sense when a second division, a USL team is playing, that it's always at the USL stadium because that's their biggest games of the year. And I think that would be one big help to it. Now, how this financially affects the MLS teams, they're going into these also small venues. A lot of them are 3,000 to 5,000 capacity. And with the salaries on these, the bigger the salaries get in these teams, the money they're going to get paid. Like, again, they're going to lose money. And it's hard to ask teams to consistently lose money on a tournament format. And Leagues Cup doesn't seem to have that problem because, as I said, the Liga MX fans are coming in and packing seats. And so all of a sudden, like, that aspect of it's there. The teams can come in and they're at least like making their nuts so they can pay their salary and they can pay their front office, all that sort of thing. You know, like, to me, a lot of this at the end, it comes down to the financials and, you know, how do we get these games in a place where teams aren't losing money to compete for trophies? Like, this has got to be the puzzle that gets solved.
We had a guest last week from Philly, Todd Lewis, came on, and he gave the same suggestion. He feels like if we could keep going with the Open Cup with MLS, that every game should be a road game because it gives you what you intended, right? You want to help the lower divisions out, give them those home games, and also open up the rosters, give them more roster spaces so that you don't have – Messi's not going to go and play in Birmingham, Alabama. It's just not going to happen.
You know, the tough part about that, and I actually wrote an article extensively a year and a half ago, but MLS is a competitor with USL, and it's not such a friendly competition. And if you start looking at like look at what happened in San Diego, you know, the San Diego was starting to get a really nice USL team. MLS goes in, you know, eats their market. You know, Sacramento Republic before the COVID, Sacramento Republic was about to jump to MLS. They're the most successful USL franchise. You know, that you look at the Indy 11. Indy 11 was the first USL team to get a waiting list for season tickets, you know, and their waiting list was something like 5,000 people on that, you know? And so, of course, then there's talk about MLS poaching that one. So that's part of it as well. If these games are held at USL stadiums, this gives MLS's competitor something of an advantage. They're going to start generating finances. And in some ways, MLS wants to suffocate USL and kind of, it's get rid of them. And this has happened with, you know, the NFL, AFL merger.
The AFL, the ABA.
There's a long history of franchises like battling out for top dog, and it is what it is.
No, that's how it is. And it's just that people are so accustomed to the way things work in other countries that they follow, whether it be in Europe or in other places, that they don't want to see it over here. Now, a quick point. Everybody keeps talking about how the MLS is so money hungry. Everybody's money hungry. What football league around the world isn't money hungry? There's literally talks about the EPO hosting games, regular season games in the United States. La Liga. Go ahead.
I just think it's funny. At the same time, people are complaining about Leagues Cup being a money grab, but then they're going to go see Erik Haaland play in Chicago, or they're going to see these, you know, classic in New York, and it's like it's not even a real game, guys. And you guys are okay paying that. I mean, I was talking about this with my friend group. I think there should be some harder sanctions on those things, or like, because if you're MLS, someone just spent $100 watching Barcelona and Real Madrid, and they're not going to go to the 4 next MLS games because they use all their kind of money on that. So my whole thing is like, man, like, are we just going to allow them to do that? You know, like, so that kind of this whole situation with Leagues Cup and those European friendlies kind of happening at the same time kind of really changed my mind on FIFA allowing regular season games being done in other countries, because I was thinking, you know, that's the way to poach a fan base, and it's a way to poach a whole bunch of fans. So I don't know. I'm not too happy about that either.
You know, and I understand where you're coming from. It doesn't bother me as much because there are people that have been following these teams forever, and kind of like you guys were talking about Liga MX teams that people don't get to watch them for whatever reason. Like I like Real Madrid. Would I say that's my club? No, Inter Miami is my club. But I do like Real Madrid. If I had an opportunity to watch them, I would. What I think is crazy is that they're thinking about playing regular season games here, and then people
look at the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, right. Look at that play.
They go over and play in London twice a year.
Right. Everybody's money hungry.
Yeah. No. NFL has shown this model, and they're going down to Sao Paulo this year for the first time. And you know, my wife's from Brazil, and when I was down there, I was very surprised at the number of NFL jerseys I saw in Brazil. You know, and they're going to Frankfurt. They sell out Wembley every single time, you know, and it's very similar because there's just lots of NFL fans. A lot of it is the phenomenon of Madden. And I think the FIFA EA game grew a lot of soccer fans here. And I think very similar. It's like these games coming here, like we see how many Barcelona fans are in the United States, how many Liverpool fans, how many Manchester City. And it's the same thing. They're going to come here, and these people that never get to go to Europe to see these teams are going to come see them. I don't see it so much as a competition. I don't think they're going to like, oh, I'm seeing Manchester City, so I'm not going to, go see Kansas Sporting KC. Like, I don't think that's necessarily it, but I think it's much more of a advantageous thing. And I wonder, like, in the NFL games, when the stands are basically anybody, if they're a fan of that team or not, they wear, like, you'll see every jersey in those stands. And I wonder if these games here, if you're going to see like every EPL fan jersey in the stands, even though there's just two of the game teams playing, just because they want to see the spectacle.
I don't think so, because I think that we have the MLS and there's other teams that come. When the NFL goes over there, it's literally just one game all year. And to the best of my understanding, they don't have any type of professional football league over there.
They do. They have the European Football League, but it's really? Still not. It's peanuts compared to what the NFL is, right? So it's something.
I didn't even know that existed. Look at that.
Yeah,
okay.
There was a 49ers coach who went to the Vienna Vikings and
oh shit! Look at that. Yeah. I had no idea.
So yeah, there is an NFL or a football league in Europe. But my whole thing is like, there's a lot of American fans, though, that won't watch MLS because it's not up to European quality. There's a whole bunch of American soccer. They don't have that in the NFL, right?
I know, but
the NFL spectacle, like if it's a WrestleMania, right? It's a one odd, It's not a competition to American soccer. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I just felt like this. Seeing a packed house for 80,000 in New York while you're seeing Atlanta have 20,000 was a little polarizing, and it sucked that it was at the same time,
Well, what kills me is that everybody kills the quality of the MLS, and that we need the American sport to grow. Everybody criticizes the quality, that's why we don't watch it. But now let's go put Inter Miami to go play against Miami FC and watch that. Come on, nobody wants to watch them play against the minor leagues.
But is MLS supposed to be like Champions League level? Like, I think some of what people want is just completely unrealistic. Like, we're more of a minor league system, and it's just like the European NFL league. Like, that's MLS in Europe. You know what I mean? Like, are the fans of that league saying, "Oh, you guys aren't the Kansas City Chiefs, so like until the Madrid team's like the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm not watching." It's like right. Kind of the point of it is to go out to a game, see your friends, go sit in the stands and watch some grown men kick a ball around.
That's it.
My big thing is I don't think Leagues Cup took advantage of, let's say, a neutral site as well as it should have. Personally, I think Copa America did a good job of putting a lot of games in Vegas. Vegas is a spectacle no matter what. People are going to show up to Vegas. We could have had Club America play in Vegas versus any team that they play. Let's say it's Atlanta United. They're going to sell out that stadium no matter what. Right. I think they should have used some neutral sites a little bit better. Tigres Inter Miami was a good one because a lot of people from Monterrey live in Houston. That's something that was pretty obvious. But again, I think Vegas should have been somewhere on this. Like they're at Snapdragon, which is a little odd because I felt like maybe LAFC, LA Galaxy, they already have some big games. Maybe you should put Club America somewhere else. And that was already planned out. So, and personally, if you had Club America as a hub in Vegas, tons of people would have came for that game.
We had Wolf Forbes on last week from NFL Moves, and he keeps
MLS Moves.
MLS Moves, thank you, MLS Moves, and he keeps bringing up the stats on Twitter. MLS 17, Liga MX 4, and I get it, right? I get it. My question to you, Louis, since you rep both MLS and Liga MX, do you put any weight in the performances between MLS and Liga MX during this tournament?
Nah, because one of the coolest things about this is you have teams like Mazatlan and Juarez and Querétaro and Puebla that no one has ever seen because they've never played in a CCL. They would never qualify for a CCL or CCC now, to save their lives. You have these teams coming up, and guess what? These teams are not good. And like the bottom half of the table in Liga MX is not good. Like the bottom half of the table in a lot of leagues, it shouldn't be surprising. And also there are so many more MLS teams. I mean, you have a lot of MLS on MLS, but you have very few Liga MX on Liga MX matchups in this group stage just because, there are twice as many MLS clubs as there are Liga MX clubs. And then you have every team participating. And no, I don't expect Querétaro or Juarez or Mazatlan or Puebla, that's a third of the league right there. I don't expect them to go anywhere and do anything well. I just don't expect that from them, and for those teams to go, I know there have been a few surprises, like Juarez is through the next round. There are going to be a few surprises and all that, but no, I don't expect those teams to go to MLS stadiums and win games. No, that is not something that I expect to happen. No. And so, however, in terms of a club like mine, like León, which is not one of the traditional top mediatic, the Cuatro Grandes, as they say, the four most popular clubs, the ones that back in the 90s were the only ones you could ever see on TV in Mexico, which is why they are so popular now, even though someone who's an America fan and lives in, I don't know, Campeche or something, nowhere near where America plays. They've never seen them play, never will see them play. But that was a team that their family could watch on TV in the 90s, and so that's the team they like now. We're not one of those clubs in León, but we have a winning culture. What I love about Liga MX is a club like mine, which is considered a provincial club, a podunk club, if you will, but we're one of the winningest clubs in the history of Liga MX, in the history of Primera División in Mexico. 8 league titles, now a Conca Champions, Leagues Cup, a bunch of copas. Like, we have a lot of trophies for a club like that in, say you could compare us to a league like, a team like, Real Sociedad in Spain or something. What if they won? Nothing ever. We're that level of club within our league, but we've won a whole bunch of stuff. I do expect better from a club like mine. I do take that to heart when they don't do well, and they certainly did not do well in this group stage against Portland and Colorado. Should have done a lot better. Obviously, they're in a transitional period, new coach, a roster that bears no resemblance to the one that won CCL a year ago. Sorry, Eric. There's nothing. There's no resemblance to that club that was doing so well a year ago. But I still expect better from them. I expected better from Monterrey. I mean, they're out. We've talked about this before. I expected way better from them. Yeah.
Edgar says that the bad MLS teams are better than the bad Liga MX teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, you just have so many more to choose from. Some of the bad MLS, the very, very worst MLS teams, probably are on par with the worst Liga MX teams. Maybe I would, if they played 10 matches, I would take the Liga MX club in there.
Well,
but
you could ask Favian about San Jose. I mean, that's, if you were to the worst MLS club, and
is San Jose the worst though? I mean, we took Chivas to the penalty, or they took Chivas to the penalty.
Yeah,
so that's
San Jose is the worst.
Oh, careful there! You said we. Be careful there.
Yeah, right. You came at me. No. My whole thing is Liga MX that good outside of Tigres and Club America? That's the honest truth, right? So those teams. Tigres got the job done. I mean, Tigres looked like a well-oiled machine against Inter Miami. Yes, Inter Miami didn't have Suarez. Yes, Inter Miami didn't have Messi. But, man, Tigres looked like they were ready to play, and they were taking that game seriously, like they always look like. Again, Monterrey looked like not themselves, but I guess it was really political last year because they went all the way to the round of 16, and then they went back to the league, and then they dropped off in form because they played too many games. They had too many travel. So their whole kind of Leagues Cup campaign this year was a little political, in my opinion. I thought it was, are they taking it seriously? Are they not because of last year? So it was something to really kind of think about. So they're usually one of the best teams in Liga MX, so they're kind of out the gate. Chivas is kind of sort of a pretender. Let's be honest here. I mean, yes, there's a lot of fans. They have high hopes every season, but they weren't a true powerhouse, and I don't think they're a true powerhouse. I mean, one of their best players is Cade Cal, and all of us here know Cade Cal. He's a great player. He has a great future. He's just not a guy like Gignac, right? He's not Cordova, So it's something where it's interesting because I think Club America and Tigres are gonna change those numbers that Will was talking about last week.
Yeah, I mean, I would go a little bit beyond Tigres and America. I would put Monterrey in that group, even though they're disappointed. I would also put Pachuca, León, and Toluca in that group. Although Toluca hasn't won anything, they're looking very, very good. They're looking like one of the strongest Liga MX clubs in this Leagues Cup, but they haven't won anything of significance. Actually, they haven't won a trophy of any kind whatsoever since 2010 was the last time they won the Liga MX title. They haven't won anything since then. They spent a lot of money. But I would say, what is that? 5 or 6 teams I mentioned. Yeah, I would put those in the top tier. Oh, and Cruz Azul. I forgot about Cruz Azul. But
Toluca
has What do you say?
Toluca has 2 players that would walk on any MLS team. That's the honest truth. They have Alexis Vega, and then they have Maxi Araujo, who played every single game for Uruguay in the Copa America. So Toluca has good players.
Oh yeah, they do. They just haven't. I mean, they haven't won. They don't get talked about in terms of like being a club grande, like a big club, but they have a very, very, very winning history, and now they're trying to get back to that. Chivas and Pumas, who are two clubs considered among those cuatro grandes, I don't think they've been anything close to that. Pumas also hasn't won anything in over a decade. And Chivas, really, this is going to anger some people. I'm sure there's some Chivas fans out there, but I don't care because I cannot stand Chivas. I don't like anything about them. I can't stand their brand. I can't stand their brand. I can't stand
Do it. Say it.
They do anything about anything, really. But aside from a 2-year span with Matias Almeida in 2017 and 2018, they haven't been good since the 1960s. And that's just the honest truth. Yeah.
I can't speak to that.
Back when every Liga MX, or back then it was called Primera División, but back when every major club in Mexico played with primarily Mexican players, all the best ones wanted to go to Chivas, and they were a powerhouse. Nowadays, if you play with only Mexican players, when every single other team in your league gets players from wherever they want, that's going to be a problem. You're going to have a real hard time competing and being anything other than a pretender that way. But they
Isn't
don't.
Chivas the club that only allows Mexican players to play?
That's what I'm saying. They still have that policy. Now they've altered quite a bit what counts and what does not count as a Mexican. I would say 10 years ago, Cade Cowell
would not be on the team.
He would never have been let anywhere near Chivas, but they're desperate. Oh, you have a Mexican mother who never lived in Mexico. You've never spent any time in Mexico. You don't speak a word of Spanish, but you're Mexican. Come play for Chivas. That would have never happened 10 years ago. The fans would not have tolerated it. But they're so desperate for talent infusion that they'll sign somebody like Cade Cowell that they never would have signed before. And
what's wild to me is this is something where I always say how big Liga MX is. Cade Cowell had about 30 to 40,000 Instagram followers when he was the San Jose Earthquake. He played for USA. People knew him around the league. He now has almost 500,000 followers on Instagram. That guy is one of the biggest superstars in Mexico, whether we like it or not, right? So it's something to really keep in mind. Leagues Cup is something that people are paying attention if one of their biggest guys, Cade Cowell, is playing in that tournament.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Chivas, I may not be able to stand them, but I respect their marketing and their brand. And that policy of playing with only Mexican players is a big part of that. That's why they speak to so many in the Mexican-American community, the Mexican community all over the world. I mean, it's like you have the Mexican national team, I will call them El Tri. Sorry, Eric. El Tri. And then you have Chivas. And like for a lot of people, they're one and the same because those are the teams with all Mexican players. But on the field, that team, they're always going to get talked about as though they were a contender just because that's the name of the game with that team. But they haven't done anything, and I'm very happy to see them out of the tournament. I can't really say anything because my Liga MX club is also out of the tournament. But
your Portland team's still there.
My Portland team is still there. I mean, that's the beautiful part about having two teams. You get double the chances of seeing one of your teams make a run. And honestly, if we're talking about form, I mean, the Timbers have way more of a chance of making a run than Leon ever did. The way they are currently structured. So my MLS club is through. There is that.
I love numbers. I love stats. And David Day just hit us with a banger here. Liga MX didn't do too bad. It's literally one game difference from MLS qualifying 69% of the teams, 20 of 29, and Liga MX qualified 12 of 18, which was 67% to the round of 32. So when you break it down that way, MLS did have more teams participating.
I wouldn't say 100% MLS home field, though. NRG Stadium was not an Inter Miami home game.
Yeah.
No, it definitely wasn't. But I mean, it's almost like a road game because they're not at home. Now, I will tell you that a lot of people are like, oh, but that's not fair. They've been on the road forever. The first game, every Mexican team that lost that very first game, I'm sorry, you have no excuse. That's just a regular road game. You just got on the road. Now, when you go into the knockout stages, round the 13, round the 32, 16, then I get it. You've been on the road for a while. But that very first group stage game, I'll give it to
how some teams played. So one team played first and the second team played first, and then the third team had to wait about a week. Maybe they should do the Leagues Cup next year where the Mexican teams play the first two games no matter what, right? They never last to the third week so that they can get the rest. And if they wanted to go home, they could go home, right, for at least a week. So there is ways of making it better.
Yeah. I like that idea.
Yeah.
But then you look at weird situations like Atlanta. They played on Saturday, and then they had to wait, Friday, and then they didn't play to the following Sunday.
Yeah.
They get all that rest, and they still don't win. I figure everybody's trashing on me tonight, so I figure I'll just trash my own team here. So just wanted to get it in.
Well, you did a great job of it. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Leagues Cup knockout rounds are coming up. Tommy, you're on screen, so I'll ask you. Do you have a favorite? I know Leagues Cup knockout stage winner go home, so it's kind of hard to predict, but just randomly throwing it out there. Do you have a favorite?
Columbus.
I mean, yeah, they got the bye. They're about to start. And by the way, I believe, and I haven't heard anything. Maybe Favian, maybe you've heard something. This year, only 2 teams got a bye. The winner of Liga MX, the winner of the MLS Cup. I don't understand why the winner of the actual tournament wouldn't get a bye, but I would assume since next year there'll be an extra team with San Diego, 3 teams will get a bye. So I would assume that the Leagues Cup champion will get a bye next year. That's just me spitballing. I have no idea.
Personally, I think because Liga MX has 2 winners every year, so maybe that's how you give another person a bye too. You give 2 Liga MX champions a bye, and then you give the Leagues Cup winner a bye, and then you give the MLS champion a bye. Maybe they should give more teams a bye. I mean, make 4 team groups, right? Like this 3-team group thing maybe isn't the way of the future, and I think it goes to weird scheduling, like Tommy was saying.
Honestly, I understand that it's a money grab, but I would just go knockout rounds from the start.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Just do it. Forget the.
I don't know if they'll have the Clausura champion as a bye because they do the draw like way before you know who the Clausura champion is going to be in Liga MX. So that would be a little bit tricky to have the most recent Clausura champion get the bye. So I mean, I like that idea of having the previous Leagues Cup champion get a bye, but I don't know how they're going to do it. But yeah, that would be. I mean, because they did the draw. When did they do the draw? Back in January. Like I knew that Leon was going to play the Timbers in Portland all the way back in January. So like they do the draw. That's why they only had the Apertura champion considered in the buys.
Personally, my biggest gripe about the knockout rounds is that you have Columbus, Tigres, Pachuca, and Inter Miami all in one little corner. Like I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of that. Like maybe you do something better next year with seeding, but having those 4 kind of battle each other out in the round of 32 and then the round of 16 is like, well, shoot, what's the quarterfinal going to be? You know, Portland versus San Jose. You know, it's like, oh, okay.
Well, they're doing it for travel reasons, but that's why I think that they should just eliminate the group stages, because if you have more time between games, then you have more time for travel. And they're literally playing every 3 or 4 games.
No way. The group stages are similar to why they did this stupid MLS, the mini tournament format with the first round, how it's the best of 3. It's the same thing because, again, they just want to get the butts in the seats.
Of course.
So they want to have 2 games here just so they can have the 2 games here to sell tickets, you know? Like, it's
force you to buy one at least.
About selling tickets.
100%. Now, I will tell you that although it might be an unpopular opinion, I do like there being 2 games for the first round. Strictly because I think if your team makes it to the playoffs, even though I know like a billion teams make the playoffs, so I understand it's not that special. But if your teams make the playoffs, I think it's cool that you get to at least go to 1 playoff game. I think it's unnecessary to have 3.
Unless it's Vancouver for the 5th and 6th and 7th time of the season. But otherwise, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Fabian.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite to come out of this Leagues Cup?
Well, I'm just looking at the knockout rounds right now, and I mean, I have 2 favorites, but they're playing each other in the round of 30 or 32. So, like Pachuca and Tigres are 2 teams that, like Lewis was saying earlier, they're powerhouses, but they're playing each other for the round of 32, and then you get San Jose and Necaxa on the other side, and it's like, okay, well, that's not a fair kind of go. They're both in the round of 32, but then again, they could have seeded better, right? So. I don't know. The way I saw Tigres play against Inter Miami, I thought, man, they can take out Inter Miami again, even with Suarez. So I think Tigres, but they have to go through Columbus too. So it's the weirdest format because you have those 4 teams in that little corner, which is going to be basically a bloodbath.
And you know what I don't like about the tournament? And I don't know if there's any way to work around it. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But last year, Inter Miami started the Leagues Cup with the first group stage game against Cruz Azul. And they never played another Mexican team. They won the championship, and they never played another Mexican team. This year, the way the knockout stage is kind of set up, if they get through Columbus and then the next matchup, they might play against Tigres or Pachuca, maybe, and they'll probably end up against Cincinnati in the semifinals. And who knows who they play in the final? It could be an LAFC or another MLS team. There's a chance that they don't see another Mexican team all the way to the final, because at this moment, the way things are set up, it's only Tigres and Pachuca that they might play before the final. And they play against each other right now in the round of 32. So I wish that there was a more of a way to make sure that teams that never play each other end up playing each other. But I understand that that's almost impossible to set up. But
no, but my whole thing too is if you're going to make Leagues Cup this whole different thing and you're going to make Leagues Cup like a different thing from MLS, shoot, let's see San Jose versus Miami. Let's see Suarez come to San Jose, right? I would like that. But I'm just saying these little things, like let's see Miami versus Austin. Like Austin's in the West, yeah, but it's still in the middle of the country. Like, I don't know. I just think personally, I'm not a big fan. I'm truly not a big fan of this like knockout stages having East on one side and West on the other, when this should be a different tournament. This should be like a World Cup type of thing and that's the whole point of this, right? To see matchups you never see. But what if Nashville made it again and then you get Miami, Nashville again, right? So another time. So it's just like, I don't know. I think you should get Portland, Miami a little bit more than you get, or Columbus, San Jose, where things you don't see often.
For sure.
They're too cheap to do that. Way too cheap.
But you know what, Tommy? You know what I think they should do? They should just have kind of like they did the hubs for the Mexican teams. They should just have a hub where you just put 3 teams in a city where they just never played before. Now I understand that that's risky, right? Because if
it's
you
COVID
end up
all
with,
over again.
Yeah, and if you end up with like Colorado, Real Salt Lake, and Toluca here in Miami, it's probably going to be a pretty empty stadium. But I think it would be interesting if all of a sudden Miami's playing 2 or 3 games over there in San Jose and LA. I think that would make it interesting, but that'll never happen. There's so much.
Or the Leagues Cup champion could have had a hub. A Leagues Cup champion could have had a hub, right? That's somewhere where you would see Columbus or you would see Miami maybe win this year, or what Columbus wins this year. So I think Columbus would sell a lot of tickets if they went to another place in the country. Personally, I just think they're a team, maybe not the Miami team, maybe not the Miami sellout, but I do think Columbus would at least pack 18,000 in San Jose.
Well, let's go over to the last topic. We already went over an hour. This is just flown by. Erik, Griezmann rumored to be going to you. Gerard's already there. You have a stacked team, second in Supporter Shield, even though Galaxy's technically second. It's really LAFC that's second because of the game in hand. Who do you think is 2 games in hand? Is it 2 games in hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you win both of those,
you're 2
you're still
points
behind.
Up on us. We have 2 in hand.
And if you win both of those, you're still behind Miami. So you're still second place. So real quick, who do you think is favorite to win it all this year? I'm talking past Leagues Cup. We're talking MLS Cup. Would you say LAFC? Trying to take the bias out of it.
This gets so hard because, as we all know, like MLS season, it's not technically like a clausura and aperture, but it's 2 seasons. We have pre-summer transfer window and post-summer transfer window. Now, LAFC, which as stacked as we are, and as I said, we're only 23rd in roster spend, so we're near the bottom of that. Bring on Giroud. We have a team that's firing. What does the chemistry do? All of a sudden, we're going to lose Mateus Bogusz in the false 9, who has had a phenomenal breakout season. And all of a sudden, like, where does that guy play? So it's always interesting. I think on paper, of course, bringing in Giroud, we become such a better team. If Griezmann shows up, I mean, forget about it. We're looking at World Cup France versus Barcelona for the final of MLS. I mean, it's
France. Well, you know what's funny is that I feel like the underlying France versus Argentina tones come out all of a sudden again, right? With Messi running look. Let me tell you something. That's how everybody's gonna look at it over here. I promise you. I'm Colombian. I'm not a big fan of the Argentinian soccer. Everybody.
My wife's Brazilian. You should know what she thinks of Argentina soccer.
So there you go. But I do know that Argentina's right now, they're beefing with France a little bit. So I could see that being quite the storyline if they were to meet each other in the final.
It's such an unforced error. They had no reason to beef with France like that, except for those antics on the bus, man. Like that
But then in the Olympics, they came off. France eliminated Argentina, and they started talking poop to the Argentinian supporters. It's building up.
Yeah. I think as it is, like with MLS, it's kind of an interesting microcosm because we know being familiar with South American football and the way that the way that fans of opposing teams interact with each other in general is just, it's so alien to, I think, any of us here in the United States of how it is.
100%.
And so I think a lot of it, when they come together, it's kind of like that. It's like a frenemy thing where it's like a rival, but it's not really that intense. It's just more of a fun family atmosphere, So
Yeah.
I think that aspect's cool, and hopefully we keep it. And I think I'm meandering a bit from the subject, but
So LAFC, your favorites?
Man, after last season, it's hard for me to I really want to believe on them. But we really need to see how they're going to come together with Giroud in the lineup as a 9. I can only assume they're going to be better. If Giroud slots in, he gels well with Bouanga and Kike Oliveira on the right wing, or Bogusz, they find a place for him. I think that we are very strong candidates to even win a triple. It's going to require Miami to kind of trip themselves up, which is possible. We'll see how long it takes Messi to get back, although they've been playing great without him. But, if Miami drops some points, we just might be there to make it a real exciting race coming up. And the other thing is the Cherundolo to U.S. national team. If that happens, I have no idea what's going to happen to our team, because that guy has been an absolute beast with our coaching staff. So that's kind of the wild card. If Cherundolo goes to USMNT, like, all my bets are off. But otherwise, I think LAFC can triple. I think Open Cup, we have to be favorites. The Seattle game is going to be tough, but if we get through Seattle, there's nothing to stop us from taking our first Open Cup. And again, like I said, I think the Shield is a possibility, and I think the Cup is a definite possibility.
Yeah, I had no idea that the Open Cup was still going on. I thought the thing was over. Look at that. So LAFC still in it?
Yeah. We play Seattle in their little Tacoma Stadium next.
Okay.
Well, I got a question, Daniel, for Erik.
Yes.
You mentioned Miami here, and last year I was at MLS Cup. I saw that whole game. It was an interesting. It was awesome. The atmosphere was great. Are you more scared of Miami or Columbus? And I asked that too because Columbus just came into your house and did some work.
Or Galaxy when they get Marco Royce.
I'm not afraid of playoff Galaxy at all.
Okay.
Like, zero.
Okay. All right.
But I think whoever's going to represent the East, no matter what, if it's Miami, they're going to have gotten past Columbus, or Columbus will have done it to themselves. They did have some roster changes, and it is really hard for a team to go back to back just because of how the salary cap rules are, and the rules are designed to punish winners. And at the end of the day, that's it. So if your team wins, like, you're certainly going to lose key pieces, and it's going to be up to the coaching staff to get it right. And Nancy he's just so good with that team. They have so many good pieces. I love Diego Rossi, so he can't put anything by them. But definitely they're our kryptonite. I would rather face Miami in a final than Columbus, because our last 2 outings against them have been pathetic.
That's what I wanted to hear. I just wanted to see Daniel's face.
Yeah.
Tommy, who is your favorite to win it all this year?
I'm going to go against Erik. I think Columbus is going to be able to do it. They've made a lot of changes, right? I mean, they've made 3 or 4 moves here?
Maybe too many.
Right. I mean, when you hear Nancy talk, it's just, there's something special about that guy, right? And we were at the game, and it's probably a bad example because Atlanta, barely had any wins, but somehow was beating Miami and Columbus in the same year. But I just watched him, just talk to the players, and you could see how he gets to them. I think that they've got a real chance here to be able to go back to back. It's been rare, and you've seen it almost close a few times. Atlanta had an opportunity where they were a penalty away from going back to MLS Cup. But I think Columbus, with what they have and the offense staying intact, I think they're going to be able to do it.
Columbus. Okay, so we got LAFC, we got Columbus. Lewis.
All right,
Portland taking it all.
I mean, they're a dark horse, to be sure. They've traditionally been very good in knockout tournaments, no matter how well their regular seasons have gone. They won the MLS's back tournament. Let's not forget that. That was
you're right.
We want to forget that.
That was a crowning moment in the history of our club. No, and then they've made deep MLS Cup playoff runs when nobody was, no matter how many rounds they advanced through, they were never considered a favorite. Ended up hosting MLS Cup back in 2021 when they were, nobody was talking about them in that entire playoff run. I mean, this is kind of the way it's par for the course with the club, but they're a threat in knockout situations, especially with that triumvirate of their attack up front with Cabecita, with Evander, and with Felipe Mora. They're going to have the three best attacking players on the pitch in several of the games they're likely to play over the course of this knockout phase. I mean, that's tough to say. They might have to play, if they get through St. Louis in this round of 32, they might play America in the round after that, and that could be the end for them. But they're a dark horse. I like the way the team has played. They had a great group stage, a near flawless group stage, from what you would expect from them. And they're a dark horse. Am I going to bet on them to win it? Probably not. I got to stick up for my Liga MX. I think Liga MX, if I had to pick a Liga MX team, I'm going to go with Toluca, first of all, because I don't have any beef with them as compared to pretty much all the other Liga MX teams that are still in the conversation. I like Toluca. I have respect for them. Their coach is a former León coach. And I like the way they've played. I thought they looked pretty dominant in their group stage. And it's hard to say about other Liga MX teams except maybe Tigres, but it wasn't a dominant group stage for Liga MX, but Toluca looked very, very good. And I think they're hungry. I think they've got good pieces in place. And if I had to pick a Liga MX club, it would be them. For MLS, again, my Timbers are a dark horse, but I'm going to go.
What about the MLS Cup in general?
MLS Cup?
Yeah. Like December.
Man, there's still a long way to go between now and then. Depends on which teams advance in Leagues Cup and really going all out for it. I would say there's that could factor in. I'm with you on Columbus. It's hard to go against them. I agree they have something special going. It just seems to be really working for them, and it's hard to bet against them. I wouldn't like to see it. Miami take it. Obviously, if they get everybody healthy, they're a contender. We don't want to see LAFC take it. Sorry, Eric. I know this isn't really about who we want to see, but who we think will. But
this is like The Bachelor. Like he's giving the roses. Out. Like we're gonna find out who it is at the end of the season finale. Who wins?
And what it is.
But wait, let's go to commercial break first.
What'd you say?
We have to go to commercial break first. But wait.
No, MLS Cup. It's hard to bet against Columbus. I'm going to go with them. And in Leagues Cup, I'll also go with Columbus, and I'll go with Toluca for the Liga MX. Yeah.
All right. So Toluca, Liga MX. Somebody here in the chat said that this is Toluca's year. All right. Favian.
Yeah.
Who would you put your money on? Who would you put your degenerate money on to win the MLS Cup?
I think Cruz Azul has the easiest route to get to the semis. Personally, I think right now Cincinnati doesn't really have center backs. They have a really big problem on defense. So unless they're scoring 4 goals a game, like we saw last week or this last game, they're not going to make it too far. So personally, I think it's going to be someone out of that group: Columbus, Miami, Tigres, Pachuca, and I'm going to go with Tigres.
And MLS Cup.
MLS Cup. I think it's going to be LAFC if they get Griezmann.
Yes. Yeah. I for some reason I would like to see Inter Miami LAFC final. That's what I'm hoping for. But I think the Galaxy are going to end up in the finals.
Apple loves that. Apple would love the ratings for that. Absolutely.
Ricky pushed the ball a little too much for me. I think the way LAFC kind of distributed the ball, and especially if Giroud can do what he did in AC Milan.
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't know, man. That attack for me for the Galaxy, I don't know. It does something to me.
They haven't had a striker in how long?
What was the last striker they had?
Well, they have Jovic, but he's always injured.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
Wow.
All right. Well,
I'd go in. This is a whole conversation though, and the show's wrapping up. And otherwise, the next show we'll talk about this.
All right. No, I'm looking forward to it. I think we'll wrap it up there. Before we head out, did anybody watch the Olympics at all for the men's or the women's U.S. national teams? No,
I watched most of the women's. I watched most of the
Yeah.
women's team today.
because I'm curious, just real quick, if the men were playing their national team and they were doing well, it'll be promoted like crazy. The women just never get promoted very much. Do you think we're ever gonna get that push for the women's team? And I'm not doing the whole fair pay or equal pay. Like, that's a whole nother story. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just promoting. Do you think we're ever gonna get the women to get promoted as much as the men? Because, I mean, at least in the United States, they're the ones that represent for us because the men don't.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely
Lewis?
should. I mean, I what I really want is just for the men's portion of the system of the program to aspire to do what the women do. I mean, that was an embarrassing elimination against Morocco. It was a good team, but come on, I mean, that was embarrassing. That's not, once again, the women's side of the system is going to bat for us. They're making us look relevant, and I think it's very, very important for them, whether they're being promoted fairly or not. I mean, I think it's very, very important for them to get back to that stage. Obviously, the Olympic tournament for the women is a senior tournament. It's just, I mean, it's on par with, I don't know if it's on par. You'd have to ask them whether they think it's on par with the World Cup or not. But it's a senior tournament. So for them to be representing and getting to the gold medal match as they have, I think that's very, very important to
on Saturday. I think more people need to talk about it.
To raise the profile again. Yeah. I mean, I think that's very, very important. This is a senior tournament. They're in the gold medal match. And, they're doing what the men have never really been able to do. And, I live in Mexico, but I'm USMNT ride or die, and they just keep disappointing me. So at least the women, as we would say in Mexico, they are dando la cara for the whole system. I mean, they're making us look relevant when the men are just not contributing anything to that. So I think it's very, very important to be on that stage again, because it seemed like the rest of the world, at least in this last Women's World Cup, it seemed like the rest of the world had caught up to them a little bit. So for them to be in the gold medal match, I think, asserting their authority once again, I think is very important.
The reason I brought it up real quick, my daughter's 8 years old. She's into soccer. I went with her to a store. She wanted to buy a USA jersey. They have, all you find is Pulisic.
Really?
You have no female jerseys. And I challenge you to go to a Dick's Sporting Goods anywhere, and maybe over there in the West Coast is different. Here in Miami, you're not going to find, it's either no name in the back or Pulisic, and no stars. You might as well sell the women's, since they have 4 stars. You might as well sell the women's jersey. You're not going to find the women's jersey. It's all.
If I go anywhere here in the Bay Area, you find the women's shirt before the men's.
Really? Same in Portland.
Yeah.
Same in Portland. I actually went to a Dick's Sporting Goods in Portland before I came.
Promoting is at least 50-50 on women's and men's around here in LA too.
Because in Stanford and Santa Clara, they're the hotbed of women's soccer. So that's why the Bay Area is 100% with the women. But I would say it's more like championship fatigue. I think the women always win, right? So it's something maybe people are kind of, okay, they're going to win. Of course they're going to win. They're USA, even though it's not the same.
We lost the World Cup though.
Yeah, but it's more like, well, Rampone, it's more political than actual talent. I think everyone knows that we have the talent.
But the politics are gone now this year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The politics are gone, so that doesn't sell ratings. And I watch a lot of TV, and especially USA. I have not seen one advertisement for either the men's or women's team. And Dan, you watch wrestling, the commercials during USA, they never have that. I've seen NBA commercials or for the men's basketball team games, but I haven't seen much soccer advertisements at all.
The men's have lost a lot of gold medals, right? So I think this is the one time where they're actually paying attention. So I think a lot of the promotion goes to that, because this is like basically what the NBA should be doing every Olympic run, is get the best players that just destroy everybody, right? So I think it's just championship fatigue, to be honest. And that's shocking about Miami, because I really would think that Miami would have women's soccer jerseys, to be honest.
No, we need a women's soccer team down here.
That's true.
And Jorge Mas said that he wanted to look into it. I haven't heard a peep about it. We're going to get a Fort Lauderdale team this upcoming season. Nothing for Inter Miami. So I'm hoping soon, because, like I said, my daughter's into it. So I would like to get her into it. I don't want to drive to Orlando and have her rooting for an Orlando team. Get out of here. All right. I guess we'll wrap it up there. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I'm going to bring you guys one at a time, so you guys can let everybody know where they can find you. Let's start with Favian. Let us know what you rep and where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Favian Rankel or 90 Minute USA, and I'm just always doing content and trying to bring soccer to the forefront.
All right, Louis.
Yeah, well, you can see my hashtag here, Fiero Viajero. That's my handle in Club Leon circles. You can search for that. You'll find me pretty much anywhere on all the socials, and my Twitter/X handle is there as well. And you can just search me by my name. You'll find me. And the Lions Den podcast, you can search for that word for word. You'll find us on YouTube. You'll find us live streaming there on X, occasionally on Facebook. We try to get a show in at least once a week. I've been traveling a lot, so it's been a little bit less constant these past few months. But yeah, you can find me and my travels to see Club Leon. You can find the podcast, and yeah, happy to be part of the community.
Awesome, thank you, Louis. Erik, you got some love in the chat. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, Erik VOBG on Twitter. Our podcast is Voices of the Black and Gold podcast. You can find us on Twitter or on YouTube. We are live 7 p.m. every Monday, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 o'clock for all you East Coasters, but you guys usually stay up later than us anyways. So, hey, check it out if you want to see some LAFC stuff, because I know everybody just needs to hear more about LAFC.
More about the French. And no gas bagging. We went almost an hour and a half, so we're going to ride out of here. And Mr. Krabs said the whole show was gas bagging. No, but maybe next week. I do appreciate everybody joining in episode number 3.
Just keep shitting on me today, Daniel.
I was gonna say, everybody goes by Tommy.
This has been the worst. You asked me to come here.
Well, I mean, that's my favorite part of having you on, and the chat knows it. We all love you. Scarves and Spikes. Check out that. Oh, I didn't bring you. What you saying? I didn't bring you on screen. Just my fault.
Let him plug his stuff.
But it's because he's basically
see, my dog's mad at you now.
Go ahead, Tommy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Scarves and Spikes. Atlanta sucks. They're out at Leagues Cup. We got 3 weeks off. That's all I really got. And by the way, though, there was a comment, and Erik, I've don't follow you. I'm going to make sure I follow you. I've never seen you before, but someone said
make sure that everybody follows everybody on screen right now, and like the video, please. It really helps.
Someone said you look like you were from a 2000 pop punk band. And I just got back from like an emo Warped Tour, and like that was the first thing I thought as well. So I had to get that comment out there. Like Taking Back Sunday, Blink-182, all of them. You could be part of that.
I'm probably a little bit older than those guys, and my hair has been the same since back then. I haven't changed my haircut for like 30 years. So
well, I forget the name of the guy, but Red Hot Chili Peppers is what I'm getting that vibe.
Well, LA has a big pop-up scene, right? Like they have a big scene. I thought.
Yep.
Oh no! Here
I hope I didn't offend you.
I'm really hard to offend.
All right. And for those of you that don't know, I'm Daniel, Battered Hair-Ons. We come on like 5 times a week. So just Battered Hair-Ons on YouTube, and we do Spanish on Monday nights, English the other 5 times. We'll be doing Cafecito with the Hair-Ons tomorrow at 7 a.m. So you can catch us just about whenever. We're putting out content all the time. All right. So if you are joining us on audio, we appreciate you listening all the way to the end. Please leave us 5 stars, comment, review, all that good stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends that there's a new MLS show where we bring on podcasts from across the country, chop it up every week. And wish John Bon Jovi is what Mike V said, Erik. So you do with that what you want.
Living on a prayer, baby.
And for those of you that are in the chat, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us for the last hour and a half. You guys are the best part of the show. Thanks for participating. And until the next one, have a good one.